He painted the deck, but we don't know how many hours that took.
Did he finish the deck?
Yes, ma'am, he did.
It was purchased jointly, correct?
Yes.
But then you go on to say, the next sentence of your answer says, purchase the games there is abandoned. Let's get to your work that you say you did. Did you owe him any money? How many hours did you work on the deck?
I worked 3 days on the deck.
Fine. 3 days on the deck. How much do you get an hour, sir?
$12 an hour.
Is that what you agreed to pay him?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. This is what we have. They owe you $288 for the work that you did on the deck. As far as your tools and other property that you claim that you left there, that's abandoned property. You left, you wrote a goodbye note. Any property that you left there was abandoned. You owe them $478 for the phone bill, because I find that you actually made those phone calls to the sex hotline. That means that on their complaint, they get $190. That's all. Period. Goodbye. Have a happy life.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Well, I'm not sure what kind of friendship is left when you come home from vacation and you've got all this stuff missing.
Well, I think they can get all my money for what I actually worked.
Damages, there's, that kind of shoots the friendship. I don't think I had much to do with that.
As far as the phone calls, that's just what the judge decided.
We didn't think he was doing any drugs or anything at the time. He had seemed to straighten his life out, but that turned out not to be the case. He had relapsed.
I'm glad it's over.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Gilbert versus Cockrell. Step forward, please.
Homemaker Carlene Gilbert is suing her former lover, sales manager Donald Cockrell, for a series of unpaid loans. Donald is countersuing for harassment and threats.
Mrs. Gilbert, you claim a series of loans to the defendant, who you briefly dated according to your complaint. The defendant says that there was never a loan agreement, and he is counterclaiming for harassment after he decided to return to his wife. Is that with?
Try and reconcile.
You decided to reconcile with who?
The mother of my child.
All right, Miss Gilbert, tell me where and when you met the defendant.
I met Mr. Cockrell on April 4th of this year, playing a game on the internet. I played several games with him on there, met him later on the internet when he would get home from work and play card games and such with him. And within about a week or so, we were talking on the phone for very long periods of time.
Okay. You live close by to each other?
No.
We were over 1,000 miles away.
So you met him on April 4th, 2002, and when was the first loan, and what was it for?
He showed up in my hometown on May 2nd.
What do you mean he showed up?
He showed up. He called me on the phone, told me he was there in town. And my husband and I were having a lot of problems. We were in the process of a divorce.
Okay.
He stayed in town for a couple of days. When he left, we had made plans that after my divorce was final that he was going to come back and get me and get my belongings. And at that time, I gave him $200 in order to be able to pay for the gas and stuff for him to come back and get me with. And after he got home, he called me on the phone and he said, gosh, guess what happened? When I was in Kansas City, I stopped at a convenience store to get gas, and I left my wallet sitting there. Didn't realize it was missing till I got to St. Louis, turned around, went back, found my wallet, but the money wasn't in it. And at that time asked me if I could send him money to help him pay his car payment, his car insurance, and his rent, which I did. I sent him a check for $700.
Okay, go ahead.
After that, a few weeks later, my husband had found out that he had been into town and threw a complete fit, which we understand why. But I was afraid at that time. I didn't know what was going to happen. I knew my husband had a very violent temper. So I called Donald on the phone and asked him if he could come and get me at that time. And the next day, he showed up there to pick me up and take me back. At that time, he paid for the gas in order to get there to get me, and everything else on the way back I paid for.
But he did come back and get you.
He did come back and get me, but I had to pay for it.
Well, how much did you give him in addition to that?
The $700 that I loaned to him to pay his car payment and his insurance, $220 to pay his utilities when we got back to the house and he said they were going to shut his stuff off, $80.85 for a shop fan that he wanted to buy for his father for Father's Day, which I do have the receipt for that one, and also the check for the $700.
All right, Mr. Cockrell, there came a time when she gave you $700. She said it was for rent and other bills and a car payment that you fell a little behind on. Is that true, sir?
No, ma'am. I did get $700 from her. It's when I had went up there and visited her at my own expense the first time. She did know I was coming. She said something about her husband was a truck driver and he'd be out of town. And I came, no problem with that. When I left, as soon as I got back home, I guess she enjoyed the couple of days I was there. She asked me if, when her boys got out of school at the end of May, if I would come back and get her. And I said, well, already taking time from work, that I wouldn't have the money because I spent a lot of money coming up there. She said, I'll pay for you to come get me and keep me until the divorce date, which was supposed to have been early July, if there was one.
Right.
And I said, okay, no problem. I told her that if I came back and got her, I'd need enough money to cover gas, motel stay, and I would be missing probably 2 days of work because it's a 17-hour drive straight through. I'd be missing at least 2 days of work. I'd try to put it around a weekend. And then she asked me, she said, would $700 be enough for you? I said, that should be efficient. I don't, you know, I kind of thought it was a little more, but I said, yeah, I know that'll cover.
Did she pay for a gift for your father?
No, ma'am.
She didn't?
No, ma'am.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
What responsibility do you think you owe to your 2 children?
To be a father and
To
provider.
be there, not to be in some prison. Because you've just said to the entire world that if anything happens to him, the first person to come looking for is you.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Carlene Gilbert says, shortly after meeting Donald Cockrell on the internet, he started borrowing money. Donald says the money was never a loan.
Time for you to tell me about harassment, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
You have a counterclaim for $2,000 because you allege that she harassed you after you decided to reconcile with the mother of your child.
Yes, ma'am. One day she calls, and my son's mother is there to pick my son up from me having him for the weekend, and she answers the phone, and that's when everything hit the fan. That's when all these threatening emails come in.
Can I see those, please?
This is one I highlighted. I know you probably want to read through all of them.
These are pretty nasty.
I was pretty upset.
This is what?
Them letters I handed you is Jimmy Gilbert has never lived at my address. And when she left, she had did a change of address. And there was no more mail coming. All of a sudden, the mail started coming again. I don't know why. I know I got a call from her one day that her husband, she was going to tell her husband my address so he could come down there and take care of me. And he did come to my town and stopped at the post office and asked the postmaster general if he knew me, saying he was an old friend of mine
Step
from
up
school.
here. You're the former husband?
Yes.
Did you go to his hometown?
Yes, I did.
What for?
To look for him.
What for?
Little payback.
What does that mean?
Well, we was having trouble in our marriage, and he stuck his nose in it. Should have kept it in South Carolina.
Why do you always look to blame somebody else? Your wife enticed him just as much as he got himself into the situation. How do you know what she said to him?
I don't.
That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. You have no idea what your wife said to him to entice him to drive 1,000 miles down to where she was living. You have no clue. Why would you risk anything to go there to start up with him? Isn't that dumb?
I don't think so.
Right, well, it is. Really stupid.
It's all of them right there.
I don't think
What
it's
if
any
she told
dumber
him-
than sticking your nose into a marriage. He knew she was married. He should have stayed home. He should have waited for the divorce. He didn't bother to do that. Now he's got to deal with me on it.
Really?
Yes, Your Honor. This is her day. I'll have mine.
Mr. Gilbert, you have 2 children?